My name is Stephanie Mitchell, and I'm 42 years old. What should have been a joyful celebration of my mom's 70th birthday at her Connecticut home turned into something else entirely. I was arranging candles on her favorite chocolate cake when my phone vibrated. My daughter Haley's face lit up the screen. I smiled, assuming she was calling to wish her grandma happy birthday from college. Instead, her voice came through frantic and sharp. "Mom, get out of the house. Now." The urgency in her tone made my blood run cold. Something was terribly wrong. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit like and subscribe to follow my journey through what happened next. Trust me, you won't believe how a single phone call changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I stood frozen in my mother's kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, trying to process what I just heard. This didn't make sense. Haley wasn't the type to make dramatic statements or pull pranks. At 19, she was always the responsible one. The level-headed student who'd earned a full scholarship to NYU. The voice of reason when others panicked. "Haley, what are you talking about?" asked, lowering my voice so the rest of the family wouldn't hear. In the living room, laughter erupted as my brother Jeff showed Mom old family photos. "Mom, please, you need to listen to me." Her voice cracked, something I rarely heard from my confident daughter. "You need to get everyone out of Grandma's house right now." "Honey, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I stepped away from the kitchen doorway, my heart beginning to race. "I know the truth, Mom." "I know what?" Her voice cut off abruptly, replaced by static and then silence. "Haley?" I pulled the phone away to look at the screen. Call ended. I immediately called back, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. "Everything okay in there?" My brother Jeff poked his head into the kitchen. "Mom's asking for her cake." I forced a smile. "Just a second." That was Haley on the phone. "Tell her she's missing some great embarrassing stories about her mom," he teased before returning to the living room. I tried calling Haley 3 more times. Nothing. My palms were sweating now. Should I tell everyone about Haley's warning? What if it was nothing? Mom had been looking forward to this birthday for months. The whole family was here. My brother Jeff and his wife Laura had driven in from Boston, and even my Aunt Susan had flown in from Chicago. My phone vibrated with a text. "Haley. Mom, please. Trust me. Get everyone out. Carbon monoxide maybe? Not sure. Call from outside." I breathed a small sigh of relief. Carbon monoxide, that made some kind of sense. Mom's house was old, with an ancient heating system. But why would Haley know about a carbon monoxide leak from college, 3 states away? And why wouldn't the detectors be going off? Carbon monoxide was called the silent killer for a reason. I glanced toward the living room where my 70-year-old mother sat surrounded by family, her silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. I couldn't take chances with their safety, but I also didn't want to cause unnecessary panic. I slipped out the side door to the yard, breathing in the crisp autumn air as I tried Haley again. Straight to voicemail. "Haley, please call me back immediately. I got your text about carbon monoxide, but I don't understand how you would know that. The detectors aren't going off. Call me back." I walked the perimeter of the house, checking for anything unusual. Everything looked normal. Mom's carefully tended garden, the old oak tree with its tire swing, the familiar stone path I'd walked thousands of times. Nothing seemed out of place or threatening. When I returned to the front of the house, I saw Laura through the window, laughing as she refilled wine glasses. Inside was warmth, family celebration, and possibly danger. Haley believed it was real, and that was enough for me. I stepped back into the house, my decision made. I had to get everyone out without causing panic. I took a deep breath and put on my calmest voice. "Hey everyone," I announced, stepping into the living room where my family was gathered around Mom in her favorite armchair. "I hate to interrupt, but I just got a call that there might be a carbon monoxide issue in the neighborhood. As a precaution, we should probably step outside for a bit while I make a call to check." My mother looked up, confused. "Carbon monoxide? But the detector isn't going off, Stephanie." "I know, Mom, but apparently there have been some faulty detectors in the area. It's probably nothing. But let's just be safe, okay?" I kept my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. Jeff raised an eyebrow. Who called you about this? It was. I hesitated for just a second. A neighbor. Look, it's probably nothing, but why take chances? Mom, let me help you with your sweater. There were grumbles and questions, but something in my tone must have conveyed the urgency I felt. Jeff helped Mom out of her chair while Laura gathered purses and phones. Aunt Susan, always practical, suggested we take the cake out too. No sense in letting a good chocolate cake go to waste while we wait. Getting everyone outside took longer than I wanted. Mom moved slowly with her cane, and we had to gather her medication just in case. The entire time I kept glancing at my phone, hoping for another call from Haley. Once we were all on the front lawn, I stepped away to call the fire department. I explained the situation, that my daughter had warned me about possible carbon monoxide, though I didn't understand how she would know. The dispatcher took the information calmly. We'll send someone right over to check, ma'am. You did the right thing getting everyone out of the house. By now, neighbors had noticed our impromptu front yard gathering. Mrs. Nelson from next door came over, concerned. Everything okay, Doris? She asked my mother. Apparently there's some carbon monoxide scare, Mom explained, sounding somewhat embarrassed. Stephanie got a call about it. I stepped away again, trying Haley's number. Still straight to voicemail. I texted her. We're all outside. Fire department coming. Please call me. How did you know about this? The fire truck arrived within minutes. Lights flashing but no sirens. 2 firefighters went inside with their equipment while another spoke with us. 20 minutes later, they emerged with confused expressions. We've done a thorough check, ma'am, the lead firefighter told me. There's no carbon monoxide present in the house. All your detectors are working properly too. I felt a wave of embarrassment as my family turned to look at me. I don't understand, I said. My daughter was so certain. Better safe than sorry, the firefighter said kindly before departing. As everyone filed back into the house, my brother pulled me aside. What's really going on, Steph? I honestly don't know, Jeff. Haley called me in a panic, telling me to get everyone out of the house. She mentioned carbon monoxide, but I can't reach her now to find out more. Concern crossed his face. That doesn't sound like Haley. Is she okay? I don't know, I admitted. I'm going to try her roommate. I excused myself and drove down the street to have some privacy. When Katie, Haley's roommate, answered, my worry deepened. Mrs. Mitchell? I was just about to call you. Haley left campus in a rush about 3 hours ago. She seemed really upset but wouldn't tell me why. Something about research she was doing. Research? What kind of research? Katie hesitated. Something about your family, I think. She's been using the university's newspaper archives for a class project. But today she found something that really freaked her out. She said something about your past but didn't explain. My past? I had no secrets that could possibly warrant this kind of reaction. I'd lived a completely ordinary life. Grew up in Connecticut, went to state college, became an interior designer, married. Had Haley, got divorced when she was 10. Nothing scandalous or dangerous. Katie, if you hear from her, please have her call me immediately. I sat in my car, staring at my mother's house. What could Haley possibly have discovered that would make her think we were in danger? When I returned to the house, the birthday celebration had resumed, though with a subdued atmosphere. Mom was opening gifts in the living room, but I could feel curious glances from my relatives. I apologized for the false alarm, making up something about miscommunication with a neighbor. Just as Mom was unwrapping a scarf from Aunt Susan, my phone buzzed with another text from Haley. Are you all outside? Is Grandma okay? I quickly responded. We're all fine. Please tell me what's happening. There was a long pause before she spoke. I was doing research for my genealogy and public records class, Mom. I was using Grandma's birthday as a focal point for the assignment, looking into family history, you know? I accessed some old newspaper archives. My stomach tightened. And? I found an article from 25 years ago about a Thomas Mitchell, who was wanted for questioning about a string of home invasions in Connecticut. Thomas Mitchell. My father's name. A name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in decades. One of the break-ins turned deadly, Haley continued, her voice dropping. An elderly woman was killed in her home. And Mom. The location matches Grandma's address. The hallway seemed to tilt around me. That's impossible, I whispered. My father left when I was 17 because of gambling debts. He abandoned us. My father hadn't left us because of gambling debts? That had been the story my mother told me all these years. I was 17 when he disappeared. I need to ask you something. About Dad. The room went quiet. My father was a subject rarely discussed in our family. What about him? Mom asked, her hand stilling on the album. Did he really leave because of gambling debts? My mother's face paled. She looked down at her hands, then at Jeff, who seemed as confused as I was. Stephanie, what's this about? Jeff asked. Haley found a newspaper article, I said, keeping my eyes on Mom, about Thomas Mitchell being wanted for questioning in connection with home invasions. And a death. Here at this address. Mom's hands began to tremble. Who else knows about this? She whispered. Is it true? I pressed, my voice rising. Did Dad disappear because he was running from the police, not loan sharks? Mom closed the photo album slowly. I think everyone should leave us for a moment, she said to the room. Stephanie and I need to talk. As Jeff, Laura, and Aunt Susan filed out, confusion on their faces, Mom turned to me with tears in her eyes. I never wanted you to know, she said. I thought I was protecting you. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the couch across from her, still holding the phone where Haley could hear everything. Your father was suspected of breaking into homes in wealthy neighborhoods, Mom began, her voice barely above a whisper. The police came asking questions one day. They had no proof, but they wanted to talk to him. That night he disappeared. No note, nothing. Just gone. And the death? The elderly woman. Mom wiped a tear. It happened during the last break-in they suspected him of. The homeowner surprised the intruder and had a heart attack. But I couldn't bear for you to grow up as the daughter of a murderer. The gambling story seemed kinder. I felt like my entire identity was crumbling. The father I'd resented for abandonment was actually a man running from murder charges. Did that make him guilty? Did I inherit anything from him besides his blue eyes and stubborn chin? Was there something dark lurking in my DNA, passed now to Haley? The sound of a car door slamming outside interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Moments later, Haley burst through the front door. Her face flushed from driving and worry. Mom! Grandma! She rushed to embrace us both. I'm sorry for scaring everyone, she said breathlessly. I just panicked when I saw the article. I thought maybe someone who remembered the case might see Grandma's birthday announcement and come here. Mom reached for Haley's hand. Oh, sweetheart. No one's thought about that old case in decades. As if to contradict her words, there was a firm knock at the door. Through the front window, I could see a police cruiser parked in the driveway. Jeff answered the door, revealing a man in his 50s wearing a police detective's badge. Good afternoon, he said, his eyes scanning the room. I'm Detective Wilson. I was hoping to speak with the Mitchell family. The timing was so uncanny that I felt a chill run down my spine. Haley moved closer to me, her eyes wide with alarm. What's this regarding? Detective? Jeff asked, standing protectively in the doorway. Nothing to be concerned about, Detective Wilson assured him. I've been reviewing some cold cases and noticed a birthday announcement in the local paper for Doris Mitchell. The name and address connected to an old case of mine. I thought I'd stop by. Mom's face had gone completely white. Please come in, she said, her voice thin. We were just having a family discussion about that very matter. As Detective Wilson took a seat, the tension in the room was palpable. My Aunt Susan had returned from the kitchen, confusion evident on her face. Laura was holding Jeff's hand, while Haley sat close to me on the couch. Mom looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, perched on the edge of her armchair. Mrs. Mitchell, the detective began gently, I understand this is an intrusion on your birthday celebration, and I apologize, but I've recently been assigned to review unsolved cases from the 90s, including the Westbrook home invasions. My husband had nothing to do with those, Mom said immediately, her voice stronger than I expected. Detective Wilson nodded thoughtfully. That's actually why I'm here. We've had some developments in the case. Developments? Echoed. feeling like I was in some strange dream. After 25 years? Cold cases are never truly closed, Ms. Mitchell. DNA technology has advanced significantly, and we've recently been able to process evidence from the scenes that wasn't possible before. Additionally, a new witness has come forward with information. Haley leaned forward. What kind of information? The detective looked at her, then at me. Information that suggests Thomas Mitchell may have been wrongfully suspected. A strange sound escaped my mother's throat, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. Fingerprints found at the Westbrook residence, where the fatality occurred, were recently run through our improved database. They don't match the prints we have on file for Thomas Mitchell from his driver's license and military service. So my father didn't kill that woman? The question came out more hopefully than I intended. The evidence suggests he was not present at that particular break-in, the detective clarified. However, his sudden disappearance still raised questions about his possible involvement in the earlier incidents. Mom was shaking her head slowly. All these years, she whispered. There's something else you should know, she said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. Something I never told you. I received a letter from your father about 5 years after he disappeared. The room went completely silent. I felt a surge of anger rising in my chest. You never told me. He claimed he was innocent, Stephanie. Said he was afraid of being arrested for something he didn't do. That he would come back when he could prove it. Mom's voice cracked. I didn't believe him. I was so angry, so hurt by his abandonment. I thought it was just another one of his lies. You had no right to keep that from me. I stood up, years of suppressed emotions boiling over. He was my father. I deserved to know he'd reached out. I was protecting you. Mom shot back. What good would it have done? Getting your hopes up that your father might return, only to be disappointed again? That wasn't your decision to make. My voice rose higher than I intended. You let me believe he never cared enough to contact us. Stephanie, please, Jeff intervened. This isn't helping. But our family being torn apart by the past. Her maturity in that moment stunned me into silence. Here was my daughter, only 19, mediating between her mother and grandmother with more wisdom than either of us was showing. Detective Wilson cleared his throat. I understand this is difficult news to process, but I wanted to let you know that we're officially reopening the investigation into the Westbrook case. If Thomas Mitchell is alive, his name might finally be cleared. The word "if" hung in the air. Was my father even still alive? Had he been living all these years with the weight of false suspicion on his shoulders? I want to find him, I said suddenly, the decision crystallizing in my mind. If he's out there, I want to know the truth from him directly. Stephanie, after all this time? Mom looked alarmed. Yes, after all this time. I've spent 25 years believing my father abandoned us because of gambling debts. Now I find out he might have been running from murder charges for a crime he didn't commit. Don't you think that changes things? I'll help, Haley said firmly. I already found the original article. We can keep searching. Detective Wilson handed me his card. If you do locate your father, please have him contact me. We have questions, but this new evidence could help clear his name. That evening, after the detective left and the birthday celebration was officially over, I made 3 phone calls. One to an investigative journalist I'd met through a client, one to a private investigator, and one to my office saying I needed a week off. I was going to find my father, whatever it took. Haley and I spent hours online that night, searching public records, social media, and people finder websites. My journalist contact emailed databases that weren't publicly accessible. The private investigator started checking aliases and known associates. 3 days later, it was Haley who found him. Thomas Mitchell had become Thomas Mills, living quietly in a small town in Oregon, working as a carpenter, never remarried. The private investigator confirmed his identity through driver's license records. I stared at the phone number on the screen for nearly an hour before finding the courage to dial. When a gruff voice answered, I almost hung up. Hello? Who's this? 25 years since I'd heard that voice, and yet I recognized it instantly. Dad, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's Stephanie. The silence stretched for so long I thought he might have hung up. Stephanie. His voice cracked. Is it really you? Yes, Dad. We need to talk. About what really happened 25 years ago. How did you find me? His voice was cautious, disbelieving. My daughter, I said, feeling a surge of pride. Your granddaughter, Haley. Why let me believe you abandoned us for gambling debts? Why not fight to clear your name? He sighed, a heavy sound that carried decades of resignation. Because I was afraid. The police were convinced I was guilty. They had a detective, Reynolds, who decided I fit the profile. When they found that poor woman dead, I knew they'd pin it on me no matter what. But you were innocent. The words burst out before I could stop them. How did you know that? His surprise was evident. I explained about Detective Wilson, the reopened case, the new DNA evidence. Dad, they have proof now that you weren't at the Westbrook house. You can come back and clear your name. It's not that simple, Stephanie. The police officer investigating the break-ins was committing them? Yes. I figured it out by accident. I was working late at the hardware store back then, and I saw him coming in the back entrance at odd hours taking things. Small stuff at first, tools, wire cutters. Then I noticed the pattern. Every time there was a break-in reported in the nice neighborhoods, Reynolds had been at the store the night before. Did you confront him? No, I started keeping notes though. Dates, times. I was going to report him to his superiors when Martha Westbrook died. That's when I knew I was in real danger. If he'd kill an old woman who surprised him, he wouldn't hesitate to silence someone who could expose him. So you ran. It wasn't a question. I had no choice, Stephanie. If I'd stayed, if I'd tried to accuse him, who would believe me over a decorated police officer? And if I went to jail for his crimes, who would protect you and your mother? He knew where we lived. The logic of it washed over me. All these years I'd imagined my father as selfish, weak. Now I was confronted with the possibility that his disappearance had been an act of protection, not abandonment. Detective Wilson said they've reopened the case, I said. There's new evidence, a new witness. Reynolds died last year, my father replied. Liver cancer. On his deathbed. It's been so long. Mom kept your letter from me, I said suddenly. The one where you claimed innocence. She never told me you'd reached out. His sharp intake of breath told me this wounded him deeply. I wrote you two. Many letters. When they were all returned unopened, I thought you didn't want to hear from me. Followed quickly by a complicated sympathy. She'd been hurt, abandoned, left to raise a teenager alone while under the cloud of suspicion that came from being married to a wanted man. Dad, please. Come back to Connecticut. Meet with Detective Wilson. Clear your name. I paused, gathering courage. Meet Haley. When he finally agreed, I felt something shift inside me. A weight I hadn't known I was carrying suddenly lifted. The next week was a blur of arrangements. My father would fly to Connecticut. He would meet with Detective Wilson and provide his evidence against Reynolds, the notes he'd kept all those years, the documentation of his whereabouts on the nights of the break-ins. Most importantly, he would meet his family again after 25 years. I didn't tell my mother he was coming. I wasn't ready to forgive her deception yet, and I wanted to hear my father's story directly, without her defensive explanations coloring my judgment. When Thomas Mitchell stepped off the plane, I almost didn't recognize him. The strong, dark-haired father of my memories was now gray, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. But when he smiled tentatively at me, I saw the father I remembered. Stephanie, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You look so much like your mother. Hello, Dad, I replied, surprised at the steadiness in my voice. We drove in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken words filling the car. Haley's excited to meet you, I finally said. She's the one who set all this in motion, you know. She sounds remarkable, he said. Like her mother. I know. And that's my greatest regret, Stephanie. Missing your life. Your accomplishments. Your wedding. Haley's birth. I got divorced when Haley was 10, I said. He wasn't a good man. Not violent, just selfish. Unfaithful. Dad nodded, absorbing this. I'm sorry I wasn't there to support you through that. Me too, I said honestly. When we arrived at my house, Haley was waiting on the porch. She stood as we pulled in, her face a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "Is that her?" Dad asked, his voice filled with wonder. "That's Haley," I confirmed. "You may have saved an old man's reputation." Over dinner, my father told his story in full. How he'd noticed Officer Reynolds' suspicious behavior, how he'd started documenting the officer's activities, and how he'd panicked and fled when he realized the dangerous position his knowledge put him in. "I tried to build a new life," he explained. "But it never felt real. I was always looking over my shoulder, always missing what I'd left behind." "Why Oregon?" Haley asked. "It was as far as I could get from Connecticut without leaving the country," he admitted. "And I'd always loved the mountains, the forests. Seemed like a good place to disappear." "Did you ever think about coming back?" I asked. He set down his fork. "Every day, Stephanie. Every single day." The next morning, we met with Detective Wilson at the police station. Dad brought a weathered leather notebook filled with his meticulous records from 25 years ago. Dates, times, observations of Reynolds' activities. He also had documents proving his own whereabouts on several of the nights in question, work schedules, credit card receipts, even an old hospital record from when he'd gotten stitches the night of one break-in. "This is substantial evidence, Mr. Mitchell," Detective Wilson said, examining the notebook. He was using his position to both commit the crimes and direct suspicion away from himself. "Onto my father," I said bitterly. "Unfortunately, yes. It wasn't uncommon back then for investigations to focus on a convenient suspect rather than following all the evidence. Tunnel vision, we call it now. We trained specifically to avoid it." As we left the station, Dad looked physically lighter, as if the burden of suspicion had been a tangible weight on his shoulders. "What happens now?" Haley asked as we walked to the car. Dad looked at me uncertainly. "I need to see your grandmother." My mother's face when she opened her door to find her long-disappeared husband standing on her porch was something I'll never forget. Shock, disbelief, anger. And something else. A flash of the love they'd once shared. All crossed her features in rapid succession. "Thomas," she whispered, gripping the doorframe for support. "Hello, Doris." He replied softly. "You look beautiful. How dare you just show up here?" she said, finding her voice. "After 25 years, you just appear on my doorstep?" "Mom," I intervened. "I brought him here. There are things we all need to discuss." She looked at me with betrayal in her eyes. "You went behind my back? Like you went behind mine when you hid his letter? When you returned his letters to me unopened?" Her face paled. "He told you about those?" "Yes, Mom. He told me everything, including why he really left." She looked between us, then at Haley, who stood slightly behind me. Finally, she stepped back from the door. "You'd better come in." The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of my life. My mother's shame and regret battled with her lingering anger at being abandoned. My father's explanations were met first with skepticism, then with dawning horror as she realized he'd been telling the truth all along. "You were really trying to protect us?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes, Doris. Reynolds knew our address, our routines. If I'd stayed and accused him, or if I'd been arrested for his crimes, who would have kept you and Stephanie safe? But why not tell me the truth? Would you have believed me? Over the police?" Her silence was answer enough. "I don't expect forgiveness," my father continued. "I know I hurt you both by leaving, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. Never stopped missing you." My mother wiped away tears. "I should have had more faith in you. Should have at least considered you might be innocent. We both made mistakes," he conceded. I watched them. These two people who had once loved each other enough to build a life together. Now virtual strangers connected only by shared history and pain. Yet somehow, in acknowledging their mutual mistakes, they seemed to be taking the first tentative steps toward healing. Over the next week, we established a new family rhythm. Dad stayed at a nearby hotel but spent his days with us, getting to know Haley, reconnecting with me, cautiously rebuilding a relationship with my mother. He met my brother Jeff again, who was initially hostile but gradually warmed as he heard the full story. 1 month later, The police department issued an official statement clearing Thomas Mitchell of all suspicion in the Westbrook case and related break-ins. The local newspaper ran a story about the exoneration, featuring a photo of my father with Detective Wilson. It felt like a public restoration of his name, his reputation, his dignity. To celebrate, we held another birthday party for my mother. A do-over of the celebration that had been interrupted by Haley's fateful call. This time, her daughter, her granddaughter, and the husband she had lost and found again. "Nothing," she said softly. "I already have everything I could wish for." Later that evening, as we cleaned up from the party, I found myself alone with my father in the kitchen. "Will you go back to Oregon?" I asked, the question that had been on my mind for weeks. He dried a plate slowly before answering. "I have a life there. A small house, a woodworking shop." My heart sank. "But," he continued, "I was thinking maybe I could find something here. Be closer to you and Haley. Your mother, if she'll have me around." "I'd like that," I said, surprised by the emotion in my voice. "We have a lot of catching up to do." 25 years worth. He agreed. "I don't know if I can fully forgive Mom yet," I admitted. "For keeping your letters from me. For letting me believe you didn't care." Dad placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Your mother did what she thought was right to protect you. Just like I did. We were both wrong in different ways, but our intentions came from love." His words made me reconsider my anger. Listening, trying. My mother caught my eye across the room and offered a tentative smile. I returned it, feeling the first stirrings of forgiveness. Haley sat cross-legged on the floor, showing her grandfather photos on her phone of her life at college. The ease between them, the genetic connection that transcended their years apart, warmed my heart. "He has your eyes," my mother said softly, coming to stand beside me. "I see him in you every day. In Haley too. Why didn't you tell me the truth, Mom? All these years?" She sighed. "At first, I truly believed he was guilty. The police were so convincing. Then when his letter came claiming innocence, I was too hurt, too angry to believe him. After that, it just became easier to maintain the story I'd created. The gambling debt seemed less shameful than having a husband suspected of murder. But keeping his letters from me, that was wrong." "Yes," she admitted. "It was. By the time I realized how wrong, it seemed too late to undo it. How could I tell you I'd hidden your father's attempts to reach you for years? I was a coward. Stephanie, I'm so sorry." Her honesty disarmed me. "I understand why you did it," I said. "I don't agree with it, but I understand." "That's more than I deserve," she said. We stood in comfortable silence, watching my father and daughter together, the missing pieces of our family puzzle finally found. The journey to this moment had been long and painful. Not knowing she was really telling us to get out of the prisons we'd built for ourselves, prisons of secrets, of misunderstandings, of comfortable lies we'd accepted as truth. No matter how uncomfortable, taught me that some calls, even terrifying ones, deserve to be answered. What family secrets have shaped your life? And share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late for truth and reconciliation. Thank you for joining me on this journey.